Lamed Beis, Amud Beis, 32b. 3 lines from the bottom of the page. So today's Gemara, the opening lines are actually in direct continuation to the previous lines. And it's directly related to our discussion between Rashi and Tosfos yesterday as well. So the Gemara said yesterday that someone who hangs his mezuzah on a stick, it's invalid. And there's a sakana. There's a danger. Danger and no mitzvah. So Rashi's understanding is that because there's no mitzvah, so therefore the spiritual supervision, provided Hashem's godly supervision, has been removed because the mitzvah is invalid. Tosfos, though not agreeing with the premise and the idea of mezuzah as spiritual protection, doesn't like applying that to our Gemara here, but rather says the danger here is physically. There's a mezuzah hanging, you'll walk into it, you'll bang your head. It's that simple. Now, the text that said that it's invalid to hang a mezuzah, says the following statement. And this makes this following statement makes Tosfos' reading a little bit difficult, perhaps. Further solidifying, perhaps, Rashi's reading of the Gemara. So let's see. The Gemara says like this: Shabes Munbaz, I think I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Munbaz Hamelach, in the palace or in the home of this king named Munbaz. So they had there, I don't know if it was the king's actual home, or maybe it was just property that belonged to the government.
Household, yeah.
Yeah, it was property that belonged to the government, belonged to the king. And it was, these were properties that were built on the road for people who were traveling to spend the night. So, it doesn't seem like it was a hotel where you paid. It seems like it was free to stay there.
I think it's also Russian when he was traveling himself.
Or when he himself was traveling.
His entourage was traveling, and he put up mezuzahs stick temporarily, just as they say there.
That he was, no, one second. Punta kind of base, shalom by Oivei Drachim B'derech.
Yeah.
It's just the place.
No, but that
That
comes to
Okay. Yeah, either he himself would travel and his entourage go along. The point is that people would stop along the way at hotels or even for free. So what they would do is they would do this, meaning they would take a stick and they put mezuzah on a stick in these hotels, in these temporary dwellings, to remind them of the mezuzah. So even though there wasn't no requirement for mezuzah, because you're only required to mezuzah when you live somewhere permanently, not where you're visiting. But they would put a mezuzah on the stick just to remember, they don't want to live in a home without a mezuzah, and they want to remember that it's supposed to have mezuzah, so they would put it there. So, the reason why I'm saying this solidifies Rashi's version is because according to Tosfos, the danger is a very physical one, and you're going to bump your head. Why would you not bump your head when you're traveling also?
I can see why.
It's the same issue.
No, we'd have servants probably watching the door, so with the people.
So the issue here is not the traveling. The issue here is that there's a king to watch them.
No.
There's an entourage to watch him.
No, he's always the king. Always goes an entourage to.
Well,
that you understand.
The simple reading of the Gemara seems to imply that when you're traveling, you don't need a mezuzah, and therefore, even though at home you shouldn't put it on a stick because you're not fulfilling your obligation, when you're traveling, you don't have an obligation anyway, so put it on a stick. That's the simplest reading of the Gemara.
That's right.
And therefore, when the Gemara says sakana, what's sakana? Sakana means when you're required to do mitzvah, you don't do a mitzvah. It fits in the context. Whereas in Tosfos' view, so let me put it this way: if you were a king and you had entourage, you always had servants watching your mezuzah on a stick. Could you do that in your home as a mezuzah?
Exactly, he could do it, but not a regular person forgets.
No, but why when he's traveling? Even when he's at home, why can't he do it? If he has servants always watching him.
No. In his home, when he had a regular mezuzah properly.
But why not? Why can't he do it on a stick?
No, but he wouldn't do it because.
No, you're not answering the question.
Not the halacha. He's not.
Why not?
Because not the halacha. You have to.
Why not? If the only problem is danger, so what's the problem?
No, it's two things. One is a kind of able mitzvah. Tosfos agrees on it.
Yeah, so
but the second, in addition,
when he's traveling,
what's bothering to us is that the order should be reversed. First of all, it's not a mitzvah. That's
understand.
By the way, it's also kind of.
The point I'm making here is like this: in Tosfos' reading, the context of the first statement and the second statement don't match. The context of the first statement is someone in his private home who's not a king, who doesn't have any entourage, who doesn't have anything. There's a danger he's going to bump his head, and then we talk about it. Then we say that someone who's traveling, only if you're a king, you're allowed to do this.
No, not you're allowed. It's that he did it. But
maybe you shouldn't be allowed to if there's a danger.
No, but yeah.
Saying if the issue is a danger, why should he not be allowed to? That's what I'm saying. The context of the first and second statement, Tosfos' version, changes. I understand the reading, but it changes. Whereas in Rashi's version, it flows very simply, flows very well. When you're required to do mitzvah, you can't do this because it's a danger. It's a danger because you're required to do a mitzvah, and you're not doing a mitzvah. And thus, no longer have Hashem's protection. When you're traveling, when you're not required, there's no danger involved because There is no mitzvah to begin with.
And of course,
And moreover, you could even infer from this Gemara in Rashi's reading that when you're traveling and you have a mezuzah, even though you're not obligated to have a mezuzah, but by the very fact, and you're not putting it up on a door as the way you should be because it's on a stick, nonetheless, there is some protection because it's still in that same context. The only time there's lack of protection from mezuzah when you're required to do it, when you don't do it a certain way, when you're not required at all, you just have it. Why shouldn't you bring protection with you? In a similar vein to the story with Onkelos and the story with not Onkelos, the story with
the Romans that came together.
No, but that was on his door. I'm talking about someone who gave a gift to a king as a mezuzah. There was a Tana who gave a certain king a gift of mezuzah after he received gifts from the Roman emperor. He gave him a mezuzah, and he told him, "The gifts you gave me, I have to protect because they're so expensive. The gifts that I give you, protect you." Now the king, is not required to have mezuzah. He's not Jewish. He's not hanging on the door necessarily. He's just keeping it with him, and yet there's still an issue there's still, in some manner, even though the Rambam writes actually clearly, good morning, that one should not look at the mezuzah as a kameya. Kameya means an amulet. An amulet, that's how you pronounce it? Amulet is like these parchments that have holy text on it that are supposed to be protection.
Luck.
A luck charm, but if it's written by someone who knows what he's doing, the Gemara has all kinds of conditions. It has to be written by someone who knows what he's doing. He has to know what to be writing. He has to know what to write for what. But at any rate, the Rambam writes you shouldn't look at your mezuzah as a kameya, as his protection amulet. It's not. That's what the Rambam writes.
Not to take it in your pocket.
It doesn't say that. He just says you shouldn't view it as an amulet. It's a mitzvah. Nevertheless, from this Gemara here, in the way Rashi reads it, and the Rashi says that when you do it in your house and you don't do it the way it's supposed to, it's a danger because you're lacking Hashem's protection. But when you're traveling, you could take it with you, even on a stick where it's not. The implication is that when you're traveling and a person has mezuzah, even though he's not required to have one, it still brings protection with it. There is that implication. And again, from that story I just mentioned, where he gave it to the Roman government. And indeed, there are some cases where I've seen, there's a book I have here called Mivtzayim Ka'alach. It's a great book. It goes through all the 10 Mivtzayim and tells you all 10 Rebbe's 10 mitzvah campaigns. Mezuza and Tefillin are amongst them. And it goes through the basic halachas. So someone who's going on Mitzvah just to know what to do on a very basic level. So he collects there different times when Rebbe talked about the importance of the campaign, why he chose Tefillin and why he chose Mezuzah, why not other mitzvahs. And when it comes to Mezuzah, they have there a number of cases where they were told people who are going to the hospital to take a Mezuzah with them. Even though they're not hanging it up, just take it with you for shmirah, for protection. And this Gemara kind of, at least in Rashi's reading, implies that in some sense, that when these people would travel, they would have Mezuzah with them, even though they weren't required to, but it brought with them Zeichel Mezuzah, remind them of the Mezuzah, and the context of the previous Gemara, it would follow that it brought some protection with it because they're not violating any commandment. They're not lacking any commandment by bringing it with them. Perhaps. Okay. The Gemara now continues. Second to last line. V'amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda said the name of Shmuel. Mitzvah, the obligation is la'anicha, to place the mezuzah b'soich chalolei shel Pesach, with inside the hollow of the door. That is to say, on the actual door frame. So we mentioned yesterday, in addition to putting it on a stick, which is forbidden and therefore dangerous, we're going with Rashi's version, because he's not fulfilling his commandment. Likewise, the Gemara also said yesterday, if you put it on the inside, that is, you put it on the wall, not on the doorpost, it's also forbidden. Now that we have another statement from the same person saying the same thing, that you're not allowed to put it, you have to put it inside the actual hollow of the door and not on the wall near it. It's got to be inside the actual doorpost. So the Gemara says, Pshita, this seems very obvious. First of all, you already said it before, and you said it before in the name of the verse. And the verse reads, B'sharecha. The verse reads, put it inside your gates. So where's the big law, where's the big revelation from Rebbe Yehuda, the name of Shmuel, that it has to be inside the door? It's a straight up verse. B'sharecha Amar Rachmana. The verse says, put it inside your gate. So says the Gemara, Rav Yehuda Shmuel is coming to emphasize this fact that it has to be put inside your door, because you might have fallen into a trap to think otherwise. What would you have thought? You might have thought, Hayel, considering the fact that Amar Rava said, mitzvah anicha. It's an obligation. We're going to learn this later in the Gemara, but it's a mitzvah to put it at tefach in the space hasamach l'shusram, which is closest to the public space. So the halacha is like this. We're going to learn this. I think in the next page. Maybe 2 pages. The Gemara is going to tell us. That's right, the next page. That if you have a very, very big door, your doorpost is 4 or 5 tefachim. the entrance to your gate, you have a brick wall, and it's a 4 or 5 tvachim. So it says, the halacha, said the Gemara, that you put the mezuzah the closest, in the space closest to the Rishus Harabim, to the public area. So that more of your home is included in the mezuzah. The closer to the edge of mezuzah is, the more of your home is included in the mezuzah. Yeah. And indeed, the Svardim, as we'll learn soon, who put the mezuzah straight, not on an angle, they do it all the way to the edge of the doorpost. Right? They put it as close as possible to the end of the doorpost. They can get most of the house included in the mezuzah by putting it as close to the entrance as opposed to the side that's closer to the inside. So now, and the Gemara says the reason for that is, as I just mentioned, so that you get the mezuzah as soon as possible. When you walk into the house, you have the mezuzah as close as possible to you. So if that's the case, so one might have thought, the closer I am to the public space, the better. So maybe I should put it outside, on the door. In other words, if this is the doorway, and this is the wall, and here's the public space is there. So if I put it over here, then the mezuzah only covers this part. If I put it over here, then the whole house is inside the mezuzah. So one might make the mistake of thinking, better put it on the wall on the outside, so that even more of the house is included in the mezuzah. Considering the fact that you just told me that the mezuzah should be closest to the public domain. And therefore, Kamash Malam, therefore Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel has to underscore the importance that the mezuzah be inside the doorway, so you shouldn't make that mistake. Another misstatement from Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel with respect to mezuzah. Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel, and Rabbi Yehuda said in Shmuel, Kasval Shnei Dafin, if he wrote his mezuzah on 2 different pieces of paper, 2 different parchments. So one parsha on one, the other parsha on the other, right? The mezuzah has 2 parshas, there's 2 sections in the Torah. One's Shema V'Hafta, and the other one is V'Hayam Shavaya. So he has 2 different sections of the Torah, and he puts them on 2 different pieces of paper. So says Rabbi Yehuda, the name of Shmuel, Psula, this is an invalid mezuzah. It's got to be written on one parchment. The Gemara rejects this. The Gemara challenges this. Meisvei. I'm going to raise an objection. I think I mentioned this before. The word meisvei, whenever it's quoted, is a challenge, but it's a kind of challenge where the statement you made is being challenged by a source greater than you. So if it's a sage of the Gemara speaking, then the challenge might come from a Mishnaic age text. If it's a Mishnah speaking, this challenge may be raised from a verse. And likewise, in every class of Torah authorities. Meisvei means to raise an objection from a higher standard. So Meisvei, the Gemara raises a challenge from a source greater than Rabbi Yehuda and Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda and Shmuel are both sages of the Gemara, and we're about to quote a Mishnaic age text, which reads, Kos val shnei dafim, if you wrote your mezuzah on 2 different pieces of parchment, v'hinichan, and you placed each of those 2 parchments, b'shnei sifim, on 2 opposite sides of the doorpost. So one on the right side, one on the left side. Psul, it's invalid. This is what the Mishnah says. So the Gemara asks, the implication here from this text is that if you wrote it on 2 different papers and you put each parchment on a different side of the door, then it's invalid. Ha-bisaf echad. But if you put 2 different parchments on one side, Sheda, seemingly it's kosher. The text says, the Mishnaic age text says, it's only invalid if you wrote 2 different parchments and then you post them on opposite sides of the door. Which means if I took 2 different parchments, put them on one side of the door, it would be okay. And yet you, Rav Yehuda and Shmuel said that it can't be written on 2 parchments. And thus we are challenging Rav Yehuda's statement. Clear?
If you 2 pieces of parchment and you attach them together and you write the whole thing, is that kosher or it's not?
Maybe yes, maybe no. We're not learning halacha now. But I actually do think it is kosher.
You think, yeah?
I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, it is.
What about 4?
I don't know. But anyway, we're learning Gemara here.
Yeah.
I don't know the halacha, but I'm pretty sure it's okay. If I'm not mistaken. Just that there shouldn't be too much space between them. I think that certainly is what is implied from Rashi. But we have to look at Taisus also because he challenges Rashi's premise as well. And there's a little aleph here. We'd have to look up the Shulchan Aruch. But I'm not sure. At any rate, Rabbi Yehuda and Shmuel said that if you wrote it on 2 pieces of parchment, even if you put it on one side of the door, it's okay. I'm sorry, even if you put it on one side of the door, it's still invalid because you wrote it on 2 different parchments. Whereas this Mishnaic text seems to imply that only if you put these 2 parchments on 2 opposite sides of the door is it invalid. But if you took 2 pieces of parchment and you put them in one side of the door, then it should be okay. And therefore it's a contradiction to Rabbi Yehuda's, it's a challenge to Rabbi Yehuda's statement. And the Gemara resolves by saying that it shouldn't be taken literally, that you actually put it on 2 sides of the parchment, but rather, Ru'uyu lishnei sifin. It's so separated, the 2 the two chapters or the two sections of the Torah that you're writing are so distant from each other that it could have been put on two different sides of the doorpost, even though it's put on one side. So what the Gemara is basically implying is, or the Gemara is suggesting is, that this Mishnaic text, which says that you have two different parchments and you put them on two different sides of the door, it doesn't mean you actually put them on two sides of the door, but it means that they are so separate that they could have been on two sides of the door, but they're really on one side. Thus, even on one side, it's invalid if they're written on two parchments. But Rashi actually extends this to be even more. Rashi says like this. So initially, the statement was, if you wrote it on two different parchments and you put it on one side of the door. Rashi expands this understanding and says that even if you had it on one parchment, but there was enough space between the two parshias, that it was so separated, even then, it's invalid. It's so far that it could have been separated. Sheniach vil chalak, he put empty parchment, bein daf al daf, between the two pages, and it's appropriate to have been separated. Not that they're actually, which is why, inferring from this, Matt, is why I'm saying that if it's not separated like that, even if it's on two parchments and sewn together, it seems to be, at least from Rashi, that it's valid. Because Rashi's problem is not that there's separate pieces of paper, but that there's so much space between the first and second parsha. That seems to be the implication from Rashi. But again,
he's treating them as if they're incomplete.
Because there's a big space, he's seeing them as separate from each other.
They're separate, so if they're separate from each other, so they're only it's only half a mezuzah.
Half, exactly.
So that's like
that's what it seems.
That seems to be his problem.
It seems to be from Rashi that the issue is either or. Either they're actually two different parchments, or they're so separated by empty space on the parchment that there might as well be separate parchments. But if they were sewn together, it doesn't seem, at least from Rashi, that there's any sort of problem with that.
So
Tosfos raises all kinds of problems with this. So I don't know if this is a halachic conclusion. It's certainly not, but it seems to be Rashi's understanding.
If you have two mezuzahs, one that's the first part is all messed up, the second one that the second part is
all messed up?
Yeah, there's.
We're not talking about messed up here. They're all written kosher.
I mean, can you cut it in the middle and attach the two parashah together?
What does that do with being messed up, though?
Oh, I mean, because there's two parashahs, right?
So then they're all written kosher. The words are all written kosher. The only issue here is the spacing.
Imagine there's holes in the words.
Then you have a separate issue. Then you have a separate issue. Nothing to do with their distance from each other. You have a separate issue. The actual text is a problem.
If you sew them together,
the text still remains a problem, right? So what's your question?
No, my question is, if you have one with the first text intact and the second one with the second text intact, can you cut it in the middle?
That's what we're talking about here. It has nothing to do with being messed up. So I don't know. That's what I'm saying. So it seems from Rashi that the answer is yes.
Okay.
Although maybe it has to be written in order. I don't know. There's all kinds of details I can think of raising. At any rate. But this is the Gemara, at least Rashi's version. Okay, we'll do one more halacha here. And we'll see a little bit something interesting about the Chabad custom. If Yehuda says the name of Shmuel, then mezuzah, when it comes to mezuzah, halach acher heker tzir, we follow in determining what's considered right and what's considered left. Right, the mezuzah needs to be done on the right side. So in determining what's considered right and what's considered left, we follow, says Shmuel, the hinges. I'm translating it not literally. Heker tzir is like the heker means what's implied, tzir by the hinge. So my heker tzir, what does this mean? You go by what's implied by the hinge. So Amar Rav Ada explains, avaksa, the hole. So the hinge, right, has a peg, and those pegs are put into little slots, little holes, right? Either like we have it, they're actually on the doorpost, or back in the old day, at least Rashi seems to write about it, there was a hole in the ground and a hole in the roof, and a peg coming out of the door into the hole of the roof, and a peg coming from the hole into the ground. So, says Rav Ada, wherever that hole is placed, whichever room that hole is placed closer to, that's the one that's considered inside. And therefore you're going the right side, going into that door. Right? So in this case here, if you can see that, in this case there, where the hinges are on this side of the door, right? The hinges are on this side of the door, implying that this is the inside of the room, and therefore that's the outside, and you would do the right side coming into this room. This is what the Gemara is saying. We'll get to that in a second. let's
And if there are hinges somehow in the middle.
we'll get that in a second. Let's get through all. Let's first understand what the Gemara is saying, then we'll get to that.
Mhm.
She says the Gemara, "Hey chidami."
Don't get unhinged.
Don't get unhinged. Hey chidami. How does this work? When do you follow this hinges? In other words, the front door, no one's going to assume you follow the hinges. The front door is clearly an entrance to go in. So it doesn't matter where the hinges are. The right side is clear. You're going into the home from the public space. So when do you follow the hinges? So the Gemara gives a very specific time. Going, for example, Pisra, an opening, the bein Tirei Bati, between two different homes. Bein Bei Gavi, the Bei Nashi, between a men's home and a woman's home. So it doesn't mean literally men's home, women's home, it's just a sample. So a scenario in which, let's say it's a wedding hall, right? So let's not use a wedding hall. Let's say it's a private home because I think it's complicated. It's publicly owned space. It's a private home, and the person has two entrances, both coming from the public, right? So his home extends from one side of the street to the other side of the street, the full block. So he has entrances from both sides of the street, right? The one on the right side is a men's ballroom, and the left side is a women's ballroom. And between the men and the women's is a door. So which way is considered to enter into who? Are the men entering into the women's section, or the women entering into the men's section? Because they're both coming from the public space, right? So the front doors that are facing the public space are easy. Whichever way is coming from the public into the private, that's considered the right. That's the direction of traffic, and you put the right side going that way. But between two rooms, both of which have equal access to the public domain, and that's the key, equal access to the public domain, then you follow the hinge. Whichever way the hinges are going, that's the direction that you would be going. So, which means what the Gemara is saying is only in a situation where the traffic, where each room has equal access to the public domain, that is when you follow the hinges. Which means if one room had better access than the other. So say, for example, in most homes, to get to the kitchen, you have to walk from the front door through the foyer room, and then from the foyer room into the living room, and then if you go to the living room, then you get into the kitchen. Now, even though the kitchen also has a door to the garage, which goes out to the public domain, right? So which way is the traffic going? Ordinarily, you would say the traffic goes. You start from the front of the house, and you're walking slowly into the room. Even though there are other doors going to the other direction, the traffic is still going into the kitchen from the living room, and not out from the garage through the kitchen into the living room. You follow? Because the structure of the home tells you that this is the direction of traffic. Only in a scenario like this, where the structure of the building does not tell you anything about the traffic between the two rooms, that's when you follow the hinges. This is the common understanding of this Gemara. Clear? And so to answer your question, in this understanding of the Gemara, if the hinges were on the other side of this door right here, you would still put it on the right side coming in. In that understanding. Because the traffic, the structure of this building tells you that to get into this room, you have to go from that door, which means this door is an entrance from the public, through the hallway, through the steps, whatever, to come into the library. So, in that understanding of the Gemara, even if the hinges were on the other side, the mezuzah would still be on the right side coming into this room.
Even though you have this door? Well,
Yeah,
that's
because the structure of the building...
And that's the exit.
Sorry?
What
Right,
if
but
one's the exit, one's a...
Well, look, every morning...
That's also
Yeah.
the primary door, I would say.
That's right. So look at the traffic that happens every morning in this room.
Mm-hmm.
People coming from that door, and maybe go out that way to the library, to the lounge, which is why the mezuzah to the lounge is on the right side. Because the primary traffic is coming from here. In other words, the primary entrance from the public is out this door, so you'd come in this door and into the lounge, and thus the mezuzah is the right side. However, you want to add quickly?
Downstairs, the kitchen.
You see...
Have double doors.
Okay, we'll get that in a second. So, 1 second. So now, to answer this question, actually, with double doors, which goes both ways,
hinges.
the hinges go both ways, like you're asking, or these ones are sliding doors that have no hinges that tell you anything. So you follow the traffic. The majority of traffic is, this is the entrance going through there. The same thing is true with the kitchen downstairs. The main entrance is to go from the lobby into the social hall, and then from the social hall into the kitchen. So the traffic, the structure of the building tells you the primary traffic goes that way. Even though there's another entrance from the parking lot there, that's not the primary entrance to the kitchen. That's a delivery entrance to the kitchen. The primary entrance by the structure of the building tells you that it goes from the lobby to the social hall, and from the social hall into the kitchen. However, so this is the right side going into the kitchen, even though it's swinging both directions. However, that's what I'm telling you, that the way the Gemara is read here, it's very clear that the only time you use the hinges is when the traffic doesn't tell you anything. When the structure of the building does not tell you anything about the traffic, meaning the direction of traffic. But as soon as the structure of the building tells you that, then you follow the structure of the building. which is the case of the sliding door here and the double hinge doors going to the kitchen downstairs. But there is one more issue, and that is the Chabad reading of this Gemara. The Chabad understands the Gemara. Rebbe writes this in a letter. He says that this is the custom of our Chabad Rebbes, and Rebbe writes, it seems to me that this goes all the way back to the Alter Rebbe. We don't have, I don't know what that means when he says it seems to me, this is what the Rebbe says. It seems to me that it goes back to the Alter Rebbe. And the Rebbe also says that we're following certain Rishonim, certain post-Gemara commentators on the Gemara. Which ones, the Rebbe is not clear about, and there's all kinds of discussion amongst Chabad or Shishivas to understand what exactly the Rebbe means here. But the bottom line is as follows. In Chabad, except for the front door, we always follow the hinge. Always. Which means the shul upstairs right here, the shul upstairs, the small shul, the traffic tells you, the structure of the building tells you that the entrance is from the lobby going into the small shul, which would mean the mezuzah should be on the right side of the door going into the small shul. But if you go to the shul, you'll see it's not there. It's on the left side. Why? Because the doors open out into the lobby. So the structure of the building tells you that the primary entrance is from the lobby into the shul. But the hinges tell you, because the hinges go out into the lobby, the hinges are telling you that the direction is from the shul going into the lobby. And the Chabad custom is that we, with the exception of the front door, in which we don't care about the hinges because the front door is the front door, but anything inside the building, we always follow the hinges, not the direction of the traffic as described by the building. We always follow the hinges. That's the halach, that's the Chabad custom.
Where's the mezuzah, on the inside of the small shul or the outside?
On the inside of the small shul, going out into the lobby, which means when you're walking into the shul, it's on your left side. Because the hinges...
So both doors are closed. You don't even see the mezuzah.
You don't even see the mezuzah, that's correct. From the outside. You'll see it from the inside, yes. Which means that the reason is because if you look at the doors, when you're standing in the shul, the doors open out into the lobby. So the hinges are telling you that the traffic goes from inside the lobby, from inside the shul to inside the lobby. And thus the mezuzah is on the right side going that way. Even though the structure of the building tells you the other way. So here's a case where it happens all the time, where someone who's not a Chabadnik comes in, looks, what's that about? And I always have to have this discussion about how Chabad always follows the Heker Tzir. We always follow the hinges, even if the traffic's otherwise, so long as we're inside the building. Now, I'll add one more detail. This is still a matter of contention amongst Chabad Rabbanim until today. Our shul, the small shul, has another way to get in, at least theoretically, making the traffic going from inside the shul out into the lobby. How so? You can walk through the balcony. There's another door at the corner of the shul, right? So you can come from the lobby to the entrance of the women's back gallery, walk down to the end of the room and come to the other entrance, and then the traffic could, in theory, following the hinges, be coming from the shul into the lobby, even though it's an awkward way of going. So at least we have some sort of leg to hold up this version, even matching the other version that we're following traffic. And the question becomes, if the small shul did not have another door, let's say it didn't have another door, so the only way to get into the shul is using the lobby doors, would we still follow the hinges that are telling you the traffic's going out? How's that possible? How'd they get in? That's a question that's still discussed amongst Chabad authorities till this very day. Because there was one occasion where the Frierdiker Rebbe told someone about such a door and told him to follow the hinges. And he was asked, how did the people get in there? If the traffic's going, I think it was a balcony. It was a balcony going into a room. And he told them to make it, following the hinges, going from the balcony inside the room. So the question is, how did they get to the balcony? So if I'm not mistaken, the Frierdiker Rebbe told him something like, they got it from the roof or the window or something like that. Meaning, even if there's a tenuous way in which you can say that the entrance is that way, we follow the hinges. So does that mean that you actually have to have some sort of even an uncommon way of getting into that room, thus justifying the traffic going the other way? Or do we always follow the hinges? This is a discussion amongst Chabad Rabbanim till this very day. It's still, I don't think there's a resolution yet, as well as other such questions.
What if it changes? Like, let's say, for instance, there's a door with hinges on one side for 10 years.
And we do construction?
And then a reconstruction, or they reposition the door with the hinges on the other side. Do you change the makom of the...
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Or has it been established?
I don't see why not.
It's been there for 10 years.
I think you would change it. Mm-hmm. If you're breaking down a door and rebuilding it...
You're not breaking it down, just taking it down, a contractor puts it up and puts the hinges on the other side. And the way that the...
It's not a question of Chabad. This is a question of this Gemara anyway. I mean, let's forget the Chabad version. If you just take the simple reading of the Gemara, where the traffic is equal both directions, like this thing, this big home, men's entrance here, women's entrance here, and one door between them. And then one day decide to switch the sides of the hinges. It's the same question there.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure you would move the mezuzah. I don't see why not. Do you know anything about that? Once the mezuzah stays in one place, it stays there? I don't know.
Why did they build the doors like that in the first place?
Why? I suppose they didn't want people... No, they probably didn't want... I imagine the architect didn't want people in the lobby pushing the door open and banging people someone davening Shmoneh Esrei. Rather have the door going out into the lobby. It's my guess.
Yeah.
It's my guess. But I just want to add one more thing. I want to add one more thing. That there are scenarios in where these confusions happen, and I saw, at least from... there's a sefer called Cheves Hadar, which is written by... the same author of Pischei Choshen. I think his name is Rabbi Bloy from Yerushalayim. I think his name is Bloy. It's a book called Cheves Hadar, which means the obligation is the one who lives, the one who dwells. So it goes through Mezuza, Hanukkah menorah, and Shabbos candles. Those are the three mitzvahs he goes through there. And there he says, quoting from sources, that under a situation where a person is not sure about which side the mezuzah should go, he may put up mezuzah on either side. And he proves it's not an issue of Bal Tosef.
Put on both sides, you mean?
To put on both sides of the door.
Yeah.
When there's a doubt as to which direction the mezuzah should go, that it's okay to put a mezuzah on both sides. And the reason why you might think it's an issue is because there's a prohibition against Bal Tosef. Bal Tosef means one's not allowed to add to mitzvahs. So the definition of adding to mitzvahs is where within one mitzvah you add more. The classic example is instead of having 4 parshas, 4 sections of the Torah written on your tefillin, you put a 5th. Right? But for example, someone who wears Rashi and Rebbeinu Tam, that's not Bal Tosef. That's not adding to the mitzvah. I'm doing the same mitzvah, again, in a different version. As opposed to taking one mitzvah and expanding it on its own. Saying tefillin don't need to have 4 parshas written, they have to have 5 parshas written. Right? So likewise here, putting up mezuzah on either side, he says, it wouldn't be considered Bal Tosef. Bal Tosef would be if you added a 3rd parsha to your mezuzah. So there are times, if you see a Chabad home, especially in a Chabad home or a Chabad house or something, where mezuzah is on both sides of the door, look at the hinges, you'll see there's probably they're in doubt as to which the way direction goes, and they're in doubt as to how to apply the Chabad ruling. So they did both. So here you have a little bit about the mezuzah is unhinged.
So it's not a problem, let's say, to put on both sides?
It's not. I'm saying I read from this Rabbi Beloy. Yeah. He brings a whole footnote with the sources to say that it's not Bal Tosef. It's okay under the circumstance because a person's not sure where to put the mezuzah. He doesn't talk about the Chabad custom. He's saying b'chlal, if a person's not sure where the mezuzah goes because of whatever, because of a mix of traffic and this issue of Heker Tzir, and there's a bunch of other things that a person can be in doubt of.
From a philosophical Hasidic point of view,
you
could say it makes sense the way it is in the shul. Because the main avodah is to go out
into the shul, into the world.
Fuel up in the shul, Beis Midrash, you learn, you daven, but that's not where you should stay.
You
now
go out
into the world. That's the...
Yeah, very good. After a wonderful day. Tomorrow I'm not going to be here. I'm going to Toronto for my cousin's wedding. I'll be back, God willing. We'll continue on Friday, where we have interesting question about mezuzah placement, straight, flat, and we'll understand why our mezuzahs are diagonal, at least the Ashkenazi mezuzahs. Good day, everybody.